everybody, my name is Julie Slacum, and the topic that I have decided to do my project on is called beta thalassemia. Beta thalassemia is an inherited blood disorder characterized by reduced levels of functional hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the iron-containing protein within our blood. It's in the red blood cells, and that's what carries oxygen throughout our body. Those that have beta thalassemia have lower levels of hemoglobin, which cause a lack of oxygen in the body. Beta thalassemia was first described by an American physician. He described it in a journal, and his name was Thomas Cooley, and that was in 1925. And because he was the first person to have described it, sometimes beta thalassemia can be nicknamed Cooley's anemia. There are three categories to beta thalassemia. There is thalassemia minor, thalassemia intermedia, and thalassemia major. Thalassemia minor, often these individuals are unaffected and unaware that they even have the disease, even though sometimes they can experience mild anemia. The individuals with intermediate and major, they typically do need treatment, and those with the major usually have extensive lifelong treatments. Beta thalassemia is actually considered the most common autosomal recessive disorder worldwide. However, it is pretty rare in the United States. It's mostly prevalent in people from the Mediterranean countries, North Africa, Middle East, India, Central Asia, and Southeast Asia. And people that have family members from these areas are more at risk of having beta thalassemia. You can see by the photo at the bottom of the screen that clearly the U.S. has less cases than anywhere else listed. And symptomatic cases of this disease are estimated to be 1 in 100,000 individuals. Now, there are a wide range of symptoms when it comes to beta thalassemia. However, the major one being anemia. And anemia usually comes along with pale skin, shortness of breath, dizziness, and chest pain. Other symptoms are failure to thrive and jaundice. Those are usually noticed in babies. And they can also have enlarged organs such as the heart, liver, spleen, and also misshapen bones that become brittle, thin, and they're more likely to break. And it can also cause delayed puberty. Beta thalassemia is actually caused by a mutation on the HBB gene, which is short for hemoglobin subunit beta. This gene provides the instructions for making beta globin protein. Beta globin protein is actually part of what makes up hemoglobin. The majority of the mutations that affect this gene mutations are single nucleotide substitutions, deletions, or insertions. And those mutations can cause either beta 0 thalassemia or beta plus thalassemia. Now, beta 0 thalassemia causes there to be an absence of hemoglobin, or beta globin, I'm sorry. And beta plus thalassemia just causes there to be a reduction. Now, neither of these determine the severity of the disease, but does determine the amount of functional hemoglobin there is, and if there is a shortage of red blood cells, which would cause anemia. So the inheritance for beta thalassemia is autosomal recessive inheritance, meaning that both parents could carry a copy of the gene and never show any symptoms. offspring would have to have 2 copies of the recessive gene to have the symptoms. Now, if you look at the picture, if you want to look at it, the ones in red are those that are affected with beta thalassemia. And something that's really common in autosomal recessive traits is that they do not necessarily show up in every generation. Now, diagnosis of beta thalassemia is typically from characteristic symptoms, meaning that a person is starting to show signs of anemia, they're having chest pain, shortness of breath, maybe going to the doctor because they're having pains from an enlarged organ. A clinical evaluation is typically done, and sometimes some specialized testing. Often this is diagnosed within the first 2 years of life. Infants will typically start to show failure to thrive, meaning they are not gaining weight, they're not wanting to eat, and jaundice, sometimes even in a distended abdomen. Now, infants are often diagnosed during their newborn screenings with a hemoglobin disorder, if they were to have one. Now, most states do not test for thalassemia itself, but they would pick up on if there was a hemoglobin issue. Now, genetic testing for beta thalassemia is completely optional. It's not something that people think to go and test. Some of the tests are as simple as a CBC, which you can have done at any lab. They just draw some blood work, and it takes a look at your hemoglobin and the characteristics of it and see if there's more or less of that. Also, molecular testing can be done, such as gene sequencing, and also amniocentesis can be done prior to an individual being born. Now, both of these tests are not very common. They're usually saved for when there is someone in the family that is already diagnosed with the disease, and they think that the individual may be at risk. Treatments for beta thalassemia, folic acid and vitamin B, and these are suggested because they can combat the symptoms of anemia, and they boost the production of red blood cells. Often blood transfusions are needed, and this is to get functional hemoglobin into the blood of the individual. And lastly, sometimes splenectomies have to be done because an enlarged spleen can contribute to the symptoms of anemia. I hope everyone's enjoyed my presentation. I really did enjoy learning about beta thalassemia, and I found it very interesting just because I do have issues with iron myself, and this kind of goes along hand in hand with that. I look forward to seeing everyone's presentations, and I wish you all well in the future.